So good evening. My name is Julia De La Garza. I'm one of the assistant directors here in the financial aid office at Eastern. I've been at Eastern for 20 years, all in the same office. I like the work that I do, and I enjoy working with the people that I work with. And one of my favorite things about my job is being able to get out to visit with families at high school nights. And that's something that we haven't been able to do this year. And so I appreciate the opportunity to sit here this evening with you to talk to you about financial aid, student loans specifically, and how to use those responsibly to pay for your education, to pay for the next 4 years. So a couple of things I just want to touch on, and you may have heard some of this in the beginning, but when we're going through the presentation, if you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and interrupt us, let us know. I'm happy to answer any questions. But we also have a Q&A box here in the bottom part of the Zoom. And if you have questions as we're going through, we have some staff on hand to answer those questions for you. I think we'll be able to address what you have going on there. So I'm happy tonight to be presenting with my co-worker, Shalane. Shalane Swafford is one of our processing loan specialists. She's our plus loan and private loan expert, and she's going to give you some of her tips later on in the presentation. In the background, I also have Angie, Christine, Amy, and Jen, and they're on hand in the back to answer your questions individually as you enter them into the Q&A box. All of them experts in their own field, so I'm sure that whatever question you have about financial aid, we'll get you covered. Tonight, we're talking about student loans. I know it's not an ideal source of funding. Nobody goes into college saying that they want to borrow student loans to pay for college, but I will be honest and tell you that I don't disagree. I don't think that they're a bad thing. And you'll never hear me say that you shouldn't borrow a loan to pay for your college. I borrowed student loans to pay through my college or to pay for my college degree. Some of my colleagues borrowed student loans to pay for their college degree. And when they're done responsibly, when they're done the right way, they can be a really great asset to help you get to the end of your degree, to help you get to that goal, and invest in yourself. And so tonight we're giving you the information so that as you're preparing to attend the fall semester, you can use it to figure out if this is right for your family, to see if student loans are the way that you want to go. And if you do, we'll give you the tips for here at Eastern on what you need to do to make that happen. I'm going to turn my camera off, like we talked about earlier, just because I want you to be able to focus on the presentation and not what I'm doing. And I might get distracted by looking at what I'm doing. And so I don't want that to deter from the information. So just a little bit about what we're going to cover. Again, my name is Julia, and I will be talking to you today. My colleague, Shalane Swafford, you saw her earlier. She'll be discussing the parent loans and the private loans. We'll stay on after for questions that you have that we weren't able to get addressed in the Q&A session. But I think we covered a good amount of information. So I hope that you can get something out of this presentation. Now, before I talk about federal student loans, I want to just quickly mention that the information that I'm giving you is really the information that can be applied to any college across the country, whether you're going to Eastern or UCLA or that little college in Ann Arbor, U of M, like the information will be the same regardless of what school you go to. And so I want you to know that, I want you to come to Eastern, but if you decide that you want to go somewhere else, this information will apply at whatever college you decide to attend. Now, the first thing a student needs to do if they're interested in applying for student loans is fill out the free application for federal student aid. That's the one application that they should be focusing on to start that application process. Now, my colleagues in my office did a presentation last summer about applying for financial aid. So I won't get too much into the FAFSA, but I did want to start and say that that's the very first application that you need to do to be considered for student loans. Now, there are two different types of student loans that a student can borrow. The first is a subsidized loan. Now, the subsidized loan is an interest-free loan while the student is in school, and they will remain interest-free up to 6 months after they graduate or stop attending at least half time. Now, like other things that are subsidized, you have to have financial need for that. And this is why we say we need to use the FAFSA, because that's how we figure out if a student has financial need. Now, the unsubsidized loan doesn't require financial need, and is offered to any student regardless of their financial aid background. So if I have families come to me and say, Julia, I can't apply for financial aid because they'll only give me loans, I stop them and I say, stop, do the FAFSA. Everyone will qualify for something, and we consider student loans financial aid. It's funded by the government and they have repayment options. And so regardless of what your financial situation is, one, I always encourage you to do the FAFSA, but no, number two, you'll always qualify for something, and that might be just an unsubsidized loan. Now, the difference, obviously being here, the biggest difference is that there is interest accruing on this loan. It's a simple interest, and this year it was fixed at 2.75%. We don't know what the new interest rates for the fall will be. Congress will determine that later this spring. And when they put that out, we will push that out to our student population. One more thing about the student loans, there is no credit check for students to answer or to receive these loans. They don't have to go through a credit check. These are already guaranteed by the government as long as they, one, do the FAFSA, and two, they meet the Title IV aid requirements. So they're attending school and they're passing their classes. There isn't any reason to think that they would not be approved for these student loans. They're already guaranteed. One quick note about origination fees that we just want to make sure that you're aware of is that the Department of Ed keeps an origination fee on student loans of 1.05%. And so if your student borrows a $2,000 loan, they're going to keep $20 of it for processing. You'll still have to pay back, the student will still have to pay back $2,000, but you'll only see a credit of $19.80 applied to the account because they keep that just over 1% for processing. Now, when we're talking about student loans, there we go. When we're talking about student loans, in an effort to minimize students borrowing more than what they need, the government has set limits on how much a student can borrow when they're in school. So you see here, a first-year student can borrow up to $3,500 in subsidized loan as long as they have that financial need based on the FAFSA, and $2,000 in an unsubsidized loan, which will give them up to $5,500. Now you see that third column there, that's for an additional unsubsidized loan for a plus denial for $4,000. If a parent applies for a parent loan and they're denied for whatever reason because of their credit, like their credit is denied, we're able to offer the student an increase in that unsubsidized loan by another $4,000 to, excuse me, grant the student up to $9,500 in that first year. We'll get more into detail on the additional unsubsidized loan part, but what I wanted to tell you and show you and highlight really is that for the first 2 years, this is the maximum that a student can borrow for their undergraduate education. So if they took the maximum between both years, they would have borrowed $20,000 in student loans. Now, if they need that, then they need it. It's great. Let them use it to invest in themselves. But when you look at what you're seeing on the news in the student loan crisis, nationally, an undergraduate student graduates with about $38,000 in student loan debt. If a student at Eastern, for example, has borrowed $20,000 in their first 2 years, they're already getting close to that national average. And they've only completed 2 years. And so what I want to highlight is that even though you can borrow up to almost $10,000 your first year and just over $10,000 your second year, you don't need all of that money. You're not required to borrow it, and we certainly encourage you not to borrow what you don't need. One more thing we wanted to highlight here with the aggregate loan limits is that a student is also limited in how much they can borrow based on their dependency status as an undergraduate student. And so a dependent student can borrow up to $31,000 on their own. Again, if we're looking at loan limits and what they borrow each year, that can add up pretty quickly. And so we want to make sure that students are aware that they have these options. It's available to them if they need it, but it can add up pretty quickly if you're accepting the maximum amount, especially if your expenses don't equal up to all. So if you've decided that student loan options are a way for you, and you want to borrow a student loan, you know that this is a loan that you'll have to pay back. And student loan repayment begins 6 months after the student graduates or stops attending school at least half time. So if you decide to go a semester and just take one class, or you decide to take a year off, 6 months from the last time that you were enrolled at least half time, you'll be contacted by your student loan servicer to start setting up your payments on that student loan. Now, your loan servicer, and some of you may be familiar with companies like Sallie Mae or Navient or Nelnet, Great Lakes, FIA. These are companies that the government has hired to manage the student loan portfolio. They are responsible for collecting your payment, applying it to your balance, reaching out to you. If you miss a payment, they're the ones who will work with you if you get into a situation where you can't make your payments. And so it's important that if you decide that you want to take a loan, that not only you find out who your servicer is, and certainly we can help you with that, but you keep in contact with them throughout the loan repayment period and while you're in school, just because they're going to be your best friends for the next few years. And when we're talking about student loan repayment, I won't get into too many details about this, but I want you to be aware of what your options are. Now, in terms of federal loans, again, this will be applied to anyone or any college across the country. But your standard repayment for your student loans is whatever you owe divided over a period of 10 years. You make a payment each month. But sometimes if you get over what maybe it's too much, you've borrowed and you can't afford your payments, they do offer income-based repayment plans, and you see the different options that they offer here. You'll also see that we have there listed PSLF, that's Public Service Loan Forgiveness. On your federal loans, if you work in the public sector and you do so for 10 years and you've made 10 years of payments, you can have the rest of your loans forgiven as long as you've met the requirements. Now, if you're doing a standard repayment, that won't help much because you've had your loans paid off then in 10 years. If you extend your payment out a little bit, and I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we just want you to be aware that that program exists. Now, these programs change with every new administration. Yeah.
We're kind of losing you.
Oh. Okay. Is it better? Yes, no? Shill, do you want to take over for this part then?
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to get you. You were cutting in and out quite a bit there.
Okay.
I want to make sure everybody got the information.
Sure.
Maybe I'll back up a slide.
Okay, sure, absolutely.
Want to turn over the controls to me, Julia?
Okay.
We'll get to you guys in just 1 second. We're sorry about this.
Okay, so you got it? No, let me try again. Well, tell me how far back you want me to go because it's not sharing right now.
Julie, you got to give me control. Oh, wait, there you go.
Okay.
Okay, I got it
All
now.
right.
I think.
Okay.
I believe I do. Okay. I didn't mean to go that far. Well, well. I apologize, guys. We're having a little bit of difficulty here. Well,
Jillian, how far did you want to go back?
I only wanted to go back one screen, but it
Okay,
keeps
here.
going back a lot of
That's okay.
screens.
That's okay. Let me just restart this part. Let me just do that. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So how about right here?
Yeah, I think that's good. And then to anybody, if you have questions about anything that came up before this, just throw them in the Q&A box and we'll be glad to answer that. And if it seems it's something that everybody missed, then we can go back and repeat that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so like Julie did, I'm going to turn my camera off so I can talk to you guys about that. And like that happened, if something happens to my connection, you're not able to hear me well, throw it in the chat box and we'll try to get that fixed for you. So Julia was talking to you about federal student loans and the subsidized and unsubsidized loans for students. And I think she got about to this slide when things started breaking up quite a bit, that she was talking about student loan repayment. So obviously these are loans that students have to pay back. Repayment begins on these loans 6 months after the student graduates, or if they drop below half-time status. So if they take a semester off or even just take one class where they're less than half-time, then that clock's going to start ticking. They're going to start counting those 6 months towards when they start having to repay their loans. And every loan, once it's dispersed, is assigned to a federal loan servicer, which maybe be like Sallie Mae, Navient, Nelnet, FIA. There's several different ones. And that's going to be who manages your repayment. They're going to be like your customer service contact for your loan. You'll set up an account with them and you'll work with them on repaying that loan. Okay. Julia, I think you got to advance the slide. There we go. Okay. And then we didn't really want to get too far into repayment because this is a rabbit hole we could easily go down, but we just wanted to kind of show you some examples of what is available. Like just a standard repayment would be where they take your student loan debt and they break it up over 10 years and you make equal monthly payments. But if that isn't really an option for you, then there are graduated repayment plans, extended, pay as you earn, income-based. There's different repayment plans for everybody so that it kind of best fits your situation and what's going on in your life at that time. So that just kind of gives you just a brief overview that there are several different kinds of repayment plans. Okay, Julia, next screen.
Okay, you should see accepting your federal student loan.
Yeah, I do see that now.
Okay, is the sound better? Do you want me to pick it back up?
Yeah, you want to go ahead and you sound quite a bit better now. We'll make sure we get a hold of you if it starts breaking up again.
Okay, that works. Work from home, they said. It'll be so much fun, they said. Sorry. It's probably the big snowstorm outside. So if you decide that student loans are an option for you, we wanted to give you a little bit of a background on what EMU's process looked like. And if you decide that you want to accept a loan, when we prepare your financial aid award offer, we will offer you the maximum in your loan, your subsidized loan and your unsubsidized loan, because we're trying to fill that gap that you have after all of your gift aid has been awarded. So when that happens, students will log into their EMU portal and decide how much of their full loan offers they want to accept. And they have the option to do a partial amount or the full amount. Once they've accepted that loan, we ask that they complete 2 additional requirements on the federal student aid website. One of them is the entrance counseling and the other is a master promissory. And when you log in, the student is going to use their FAFSA PIN number or their FAFSA username and password So it's important that you keep that handy so they can get into that account to complete their requirements, their loan requirements. And the reason we put this in here is because we wanted to make sure that you were aware of what the website looked like. It's really easy sometimes to just type in studentaid.com, emu.com, emish.com, and the last three letters of the URL are so important. For the student aid website, everything that they do ends in GOV. So when a student is ready to complete their entrance counseling and master promissory note, they will go to studentaid.gov. They'll log in here, and on the right, you'll see a list of options that the student can do. The fourth one down is to complete entrance counseling. And then the two more from there is complete an MPN or their loan agreement. When they complete their entrance counseling, this is the page that they'll land on. And the entrance counseling is a really good tool that was created by the Department of Ed. It goes through everything that they need to know about their student loans. So a lot of what we're talking about today, the difference between the subsidized loan and unsubsidized loan. They'll talk about origination fees. They'll talk about repayment pretty briefly. A student will have to answer some questions at the end, like a quiz, 10-question quiz. And overall, it should take about 20-25 minutes for them to complete this process. Once it's completed, the confirmation will get sent to us, and Amy, who's actually on the background answering questions, will get their account updated to reflect that they've completed their entrance counseling. The master promissory note, just like you would if you leased a car, if you bought a home, you have to sign an agreement to say that you promise to pay that loan back. This is the same thing. Excuse me. If a student decides to take out a loan, they'll go to that landing page, they'll log into studentaid.gov, they'll complete their master promissory note, and they'll land to what you see here. When they start this process, it's not as long as the entrance counseling, but it will take them about 10 to 15 minutes to complete this promissory note, and they will ask for references. So this could be a parent, a grandparent, a family member, an aunt, an uncle, someone who is going to be able to get in contact with the student if the loan servicer is unable to reach the student for some reason. And so now Shalene's going to take over again, or I might just advance the slides, and she's going to talk to you about the parent loan process, a little bit about that, and then go into some private loan questions. But before she does that, are there any questions that we should address on federal loans or go back to before we move into parent loans? Ladies in the Q&A.
Julia, there has not been a lot of questions, so I think we're doing a good job right now.
Okay, thanks, Jen. All right, Shalene, go ahead.
Okay, I'm back, everyone. So Julia went over the federal loans for students, and now I want to talk to you a little bit about a federal student loan for a parent. And it's just that the direct parent plus loan is a loan that would be in the parent's name. The parent is responsible for repayment on this loan. It's not in the student's name at all. This is also a credit-based loan, so it's going to require a separate credit application that the parent's going to have to complete in order to get that loan. And then that credit application is good for 180 days or 6 months. So you do have to reapply each year for the parent loan. Now with the parent loan, it's similar to the unsubsidized that Julia spoke about, where interest is going to accrue on this loan while the student is attending school. The current interest rate right now for this year is a 5.3%, just to kind of give you an idea of what it is. We don't have the rates yet for 21-22, but we're really hoping that that's released pretty soon. And then similar to the student loans, the parent loan also has an origination fee. It's a little bit higher. 4.228% is for this year, and then that changes every year, and we're still waiting to find out what that's going to be. But with the parent loans, repayment typically begins 60 days after the loan is fully dispersed. You would start repaying that. But there is an option on the application to choose to defer repayment until your student graduates or if they stop attending at least half time. So that is an option. You don't have to pay right away. You can defer repayment and then maybe talk your student into helping you pay that back. And also, these loans will also be assigned to a federal loan servicer, and that's who you will work with, the parent, to repay these loans and work with all your customer service needs. Okay, next slide. Okay, here we go. So now we'll talk a little bit about the application process for the Parent Plus loan. So the first step is for the student. The student's going to log into their MyEmish account and accept or decline their loan offers. So they have to accept that Plus offer, and all that accepting is doing on the Plus loan is letting us know, hey, my parents are going to apply for this loan. And then step 2 is for the parent. Now I want to note before I really get into this, step 2 is not going to be available until May 1st. So I don't know if you're taking notes, make sure you write that down. May 1st is when the credit application will be available for parents. So the parent's going to log into that studentaid.gov screen that we talked about, and you guys are probably already familiar with this from doing the FAFSA application. And then you're going to click on that you're the parent and apply for the Parent Plus loan, and then there's a little blue start button that'll get you right into their credit application. And one thing I really want to note, we see this every year, you got to make sure that you choose the 2021-22 school year when you apply. Because right now at EMU, we're still in our 2020-21 school year. We're finishing up winter semester. We still have a whole summer semester to go. So that application is still out there and available. So if you apply now before May 1st, that's the only one that's there. Or if you do the wrong school year, you'll have to go back and reapply. So that's an important part right there. And then step 3 is really just for the Department of Ed, really. They're going to tell you what your credit decision is, either approved or denied. And then they're going to send an electronic notification of that credit decision to EMU so that we can proceed accordingly. So let's talk about the credit decisions then. So you go on, you do the application, your credit is approved. Fantastic. You can help your student pay for school. So while you're on that same studentaid.gov website, you're going to complete that master promissory note. That's electronically signing for the loan saying you pay it back. And with Parent Plus loans, the loan is in your name, but the money comes directly to EMU. We apply it directly to the student's bill. Now, if this loan is more than what their account balance is and there's money left over, our normal process is to mail the parent a check for whatever that money is left over. But there is an option in the application that you can choose to have any credit balance sent to your student. Some parents do this to help students pay for their books, or if they're living off campus for living expenses. So that is an option. And if you choose that option, then the refund would go to the student and they would get it through their Eagle One refund preference, which is their student IDs or Eagle One card. If this is something you do, you want to make sure students have those Eagle One cards, that they've activated them and they've chosen a refund preference. Now, if you do the application and your credit is denied, you do have a few options. Your first option would be to appeal the credit decision. Maybe you know there's something on your credit report that's not quite accurate. You can appeal that decision with the Department of Education. And as soon as you get your denial notification, it'll tell you, if you want to appeal, this is what you do, follow these steps. Or you can add an endorser, which is a cosigner. You can add a cosigner to this loan, which doesn't have to be a parent. It could be anyone to help you take this loan out for your student. If you choose either of these options, the appeal option or adding an endorser, there is a separate loan counseling requirement that you'll have to do. So you'll want to be on the lookout for that. And then the third option is you don't really do anything. You were denied for the loan, but your student still needs extra funding. So if you're denied, we can offer the student an additional unsubsidized loan. Julie touched on this just a little bit when she showed you that chart with the loan limits. So this is where we would offer that additional unsubsidized loan, but only if the parent applies for the Parent Plus loan and they are denied. And just some additional helpful information about parent loans. Like I said, application is available May 1st at studentaid.gov. If you apply before then, you're doing the wrong app, you're going to have to redo it. Also, if you applied May 1st or later, we don't have our system set up to start processing loans for 21-22 until probably late June. So your student's going to have that requirement on their account that says you accepted the Parent Plus loan, your parent needs to go do the application. That's going to sit outstanding until late June when we get into all those applications and get them processed. So if you know you've done your application, you're going to want to ignore that requirement until after we start processing. And then we'll change that requirement to a satisfied or approved status. Let's see. Okay, if you are a parent, we see this, it happens, especially in these uncertain times. If you are a parent that is in an active bankruptcy situation, then you'll want to contact me through our office. My contact information is there at the bottom, and we can talk about what your options are with that. Okay, now we're going to talk about private loans. We've talked about federal student loans and federal parent loans, and now we're going to get into private loans, which are exactly that. They are private student loans through private banks or credit unions or state agencies. And these are also credit-based student loans. Repayment, interest, borrower benefits, all of these on private loans, those are specific to each lender. And usually your credit, whatever your credit is, determines what your interest rate is going to be on these loans. So you want to make sure that when you take out a private loan that you're reading all the terms of the loan, that you understand what your benefits are and what your repayment terms are. Okay, so the application process for a private student loan. At EMU, we have what's called a preferred lender list, which just means that we've vetted a bunch of lenders for you. So we know that these are valid lenders, that they work well with students, they have good rates. Their customer service is spot on. So we have a list on our website. If you go through our financial aid website, under private loans, there's a link to our preferred lenders. And you can go on and apply right there. You can compare some of them side by side. But you don't have to use those lenders. EMU will take a private loan application from any lender. So don't feel like that you're stuck with those. So the student is going to initiate this process for the private student loan. They are typically the borrower. Because most college students haven't built enough credit history, they usually require a cosigner. So although they'll be the borrower on the application, it's very likely they're going to hit mom and dad up or some family member, grandma, grandpa, to cosign for their private student loan. And then once the application is complete, it's approved, you've signed all your documents with your lender, everything is all set, then they send what's called a certification request to us. And we go through and verify your enrollment, make sure you meet all their loan requirements, and then send a response back to them to let them know when to send us the money. And that process takes about 7 to 10 days from when we get that certification request. So you want to make sure that you're getting through this and you're applying early. Take care of the stuff over the summer. Don't wait till August, because then you're going to be running behind. That's our peak processing time, and that 7 to 10 business days might get a little bit longer during that time. And private loans too, they're also dispersed directly to EMU. We apply them to the student bill, and then anything left over gets refunded to the student. And no, that's a good point there, the right to cancel period. So that 7 to 10 business days for us to process the loan. Once we send that certification response back to the lender, by law, they have to follow this right to cancel period, which is really it's like a cooling off period. They want to wait and give you the option to cancel that loan if you don't want it. And that right to cancel period varies by lender. It could be anywhere from 3 to 10 business days. So that just extends that whole process from applying to the loan till actually when it's dispersed. So again, make sure you're getting on top of this, doing this stuff over early summer. Don't wait till the last minute. Okay.
Shill, 1 second before we go on. Andre, you raised your hand. Did you have a question about something? If you want to unmute yourself. Okay. Nope, hand down. Okay, sorry, Shill, you can go ahead. I'll move the slide on.
Okay. Okay, so and then we just kind of put a slide together here of some pros and cons with private student loans, because you might be asking yourself like, well, why would you want to go with a private loan instead of a federal student loan? I will first and foremost say that I would highly recommend students to utilize their subsidized and unsubsidized federal student loans before they go a private loan route. They're likely going to get much better rate, borrowing terms, all of that through their federal student loans. But if it's not enough to cover their balance, or if the parent maybe wants to take a private loan instead of a parent loan, There are even private parent loans. And maybe you might get a better competitive rate with the private loan than with the direct federal parent loan. You can kind of shop around and do that. So, but a few of the good things about a private loan where the loan is going to be in the student's name, not necessarily in mom or dad's name. So that's a good plus. And it's going to help them start building their credit for their future. The interest rates vary based on the individual credit score. So you can get a really competitive rate if you've got pretty good credit. The repayment terms could be different for each lender. So you have an option of finding the best loan that best fits your family and your situation. There are some private student loans that are available to international students. They usually require them to have a US cosigner, but it is there for them. And then private loans are very useful to help fill that gap. If your federal loans, your scholarships, your grants, whatever you have is not enough, then they're there to help you. For example, EMU has an aviation program, and that program is very expensive. And we see a lot of students and their families, they utilize the private loans to help pay for that flight time and get them through that program. But then again, there are always, a downside to everything. So like I said, I would consider a private loan as a last resort option because the rates are likely going to be higher than those subsidized or unsubsidized loans. You're not going to get those federal loan borrower benefits, the public service loan forgiveness, the income-based repayment. You're not going to get that through private loan lenders. They probably have some different repayment options, but those ones probably won't be an option for you. And then the interest is going to accrue while the student's attending school on a private loan. Like with a subsidized loan, if you qualify for that, there's no interest accruing on that loan while the student's in school. And some lenders do require you to make some sort of payment while you're in school, whether it be interest only or actual payments. There's usually some type of repayment that the student will have to be making while they're in school. And that's really all I have for PLUS loans and private loans. So we'll turn it back to Julia and kind of wrap things up for you guys.
All right. Thanks, Shill. That was a lot of great information. So we provided a lot of information in a really short time frame. I see everything that you see on the news. I know student loans are somewhere in upwards of $1.5 trillion. But again, I really feel strongly that they are a great investment into your future, and they can be a great source of funding to complete your education, as long as it's done responsibly and you're borrowing what you need and you're making the best decisions for your family. And with that, you have our contact information here. We would encourage you that if you had questions to please feel free to reach out to us. There's our email address, fa_loans@emich.edu. Our telephone number. We are answering phones. We are having in-person services. We'll be here all summer answering any questions that you have and processing and getting ready for the fall semester. So please reach out to us if you have any questions, and we'll stay online here to answer or address any questions that you have as a group, or I'm happy to sit privately in a private group to answer any questions too. So let's turn.
I'm going to turn my camera. Can be on here to answer some questions.
Yeah. So Jen, are there any questions that are coming in that we should answer as a group?
I'm looking through the questions we received. There doesn't seem to be offhand any type of theme that I'm seeing. I mean, someone asked the, pros and cons of Parent Plus versus private, and I think Shillian covered that. We did have an aviation question. Unfortunately, we really don't have the answer in terms of what the costs are for that. But yeah, and just, hop in the Q&A, guys, if you have more questions. It's kind of hard to answer the questions in the chat feature, but we are still here for questions in the Q&A.
Absolutely.
There's a good question on here about why are the amounts students can borrow way less than the cost of an education. That's a very great question. That's a question that's determined by the Department of Education. It's not something that we get to decide by the school. It's a question that's talked about through all the financial aid agencies across the country every year. So unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you, but I do think it's a great question. And I too agree with you that that's something that needs to be discussed.
Yeah, I think like I said, I've been in financial aid for 20 years, and I think they were updated once. And so, and that was, it had to be at least 10, 15 years ago. So it's something that Congress works on. And, you know, every time we get a new administration, priorities change. And so hopefully we'll see some things coming out of higher ed that are positive pretty soon. I see a question too in here about student loan forgiveness and what loans those apply to. Student loan forgiveness and the public service loan forgiveness apply to the federal loans. So you'll see that on your student loans and parent loans, your federal loans, not the private loans. And one thing I wanted to mention too, it's one question that I get a lot about student loans is, can my student consolidate my student loans with my parent loan? So my mom took out a parent loan for me when I was an undergraduate student, and I wanted to consolidate that with my student loans, and I wasn't able to do that because they're two different borrowers. So just something to keep in mind.
Julia, there's a question on here from Hannah. Great question. Are there payment plans for remaining balances after your student loans? Absolutely, that is a great question. Student Business Services handles all of our billing and payments and all that, and they will have payment plan options through the student's e-bill. Once the bill comes out, there'll be some information there where they can log into their e-bill. They'll click on our payment plan tab, and you can choose a payment plan to sign up for. Good question.
Yeah. Our Q&A fairies are out there answering all these questions that are coming in. I love it. They are quick, ladies. You are quick. Let's see.
I think I got all of them.
Okay.
Still have quite a few people on if anybody has anything.
So looking at some of the Q&A, are students face-to-face with teachers? Some are. Small programs right now are on campus, and from what we hear, they're looking to increase face-to-face classes for the fall semester. I know that the class schedules are out, and so I'm hoping that students will be able to view that as they register for those classes.
You know what I think is a hot topic, Julia, that maybe some are referring to is loan forgiveness in terms of like an overall forgiveness through the government, like a 10,000, you know, people are asking, I think, and that's what they're hearing about is, you know, would there be like an overall $10,000 forgiveness of everybody's student loans? And that's just new to us. And we get questions about it. But the loans that they're talking about are these subsidized and unsubsidized loans. And so I think that's just another pro of borrowing a federal loan is during this time, there are going to be certain things that happen, interest-free, some types of loan forgiveness, but that's not typical. But that is what they're referring to are these student loans that we talked about tonight.
That's right. Yeah, Jen, these are the federal loans that you hear a lot about. The conversations are on the news. You know, defined loan forgiveness is one of the ones that I see out there. And right now, under the public service loan forgiveness program, at least from what I know about this, if someone works in public service and they've made payments on their loans for 10 years, and they've made on-time payments for 10 years, and they borrowed $50,000, they paid off $30,000. After that 10-year mark, and as long as they've met the requirements with the Department of Ed, that remaining $20,000 would be forgiven, and they wouldn't owe that on the rest of their loan debt. And that's how the program works right now. But like I said, that was a program that was instituted like 2 administrations ago. So maybe 1.5 administrations ago. So it'll change every time we get a new administration. And as we learn things on the news, as they're coming up with these new forgiveness programs and they're debating it, we're seeing what you're seeing. And learning about it as you learn about it. A student qualifies for loan forgiveness. How does that work?
Yeah, that's, I think we are getting a lot of questions, or some questions about Parent Plus loans and forgiveness, Parent Plus loans, and how that would work. I don't believe that there are any forgiveness programs for the Parent Plus loan. Is that correct?
Not that I'm aware of.
I mean, unless it's through, and now I can't even think of the word, like some type of loan discharge,
Yeah, there's
which
like
is very rare.
yeah, that's like a disability discharge. If you're permanently disabled, something like that, you could have your loans medically discharged, but that's not really the same thing as forgiveness. Not that we've heard. There's
Typically, loan forgiveness is more the federal student loans.
Yeah, for the federal subsidized or unsubsidized for students.
I'm going to pop into the chat and see if we have some more questions there.
We have, can a student borrow more if they have a sibling in college?
No, the loan limits are the loan limits. I think what you'll see more is that you might have more financial need with a sibling in college, because your parents are paying for 2 children to go to college instead of 1. And so that might help with other need-based aid, but not necessarily more in a student loan.
That's
right. And I can't answer about the virtual learning and in person because I'm not exactly sure what percentage is happening on campus versus virtual for the semester. I only know small pockets of it from friends who have students in those programs.
Now, if you're referring though to like if the students want to take an online class, some online classes have an online fee associated with them, which may be a little bit, more than taking an in-person class. But again, we don't really know yet what the future holds as far as cost or how many of these classes are going to be offered in person or online. So we're all kind of waiting to find that out.
It's a whole bunch of wait and see, just like, we're waiting to see if we're ever going to go back to the office and work.
Hurry up and wait.
Yeah, we're waiting. It depends. If you ask anybody in financial aid what their favorite answer is, we'll tell you, it depends. Yeah, we've still got 63 people on. So if you're thinking about those questions and you're not sure, please throw them into the Q&A box and we'll get your question answered.
And again, write down our phone number, email address. We answer those. If something comes up later, if you're thinking tonight or tomorrow, like, you weren't sure about something, feel free to call or send an email and we will gladly get those answered for you.
And because we were recording this presentation, you could always, we'll get it posted on our website so you can refer back to it as you need. I mentioned earlier that my colleagues hosted a FAFSA website or FAFSA presentation last summer and last fall. Those get posted on our financial aid page, and the website for that is www.emich.edu/finaid, so FINAID. You'll get all kinds of helpful information on there, but we also have all of our webinars and tutorials posted on our website.